Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Erad Football Podcast. My name is Iconic EU, joined by my man Jakey here.
How now then, guys?
Today we will be going over the second round of fixtures in the Premier League. A lot has happened since our last episode. Everyone's played 2 games. The table is starting to take shape.
A lot of interesting results,
Certainly has been.
and can't wait to dissect each one.
So without further ado, let's hop straight in with the first game, which I believe was a 12:30 kickoff on Saturday morning, Aston Villa Everton.
Yes, we shall. Do you want to take this one, or shall I start? I got to watch the game in its full.
Yeah, you better. I was at work.
So yeah, so Villa Everton. Villa started lively. They seemed to dust off, that performance against Bournemouth in match week 1, and they were attacking with intent. They looked like they had sorted out how they wanted to play, the system that they wanted to play, and that was showed quite early. Well, I said early on, late into the first half, but early into, I think, was it? Yeah, early into the game, Villa took the lead with an a brilliant Ings finish, and it showed all throughout the game, to be fair, not just for this goal, but Everton are so shaky at the back. It is atrocious, their standard of defending. Whether that be down to, the injuries that they've got, whether that be down to starting Mason Holgate as a centre-back, because he is awful. But, yeah, it just wasn't a very good performance from Everton in the first half, and that was also amplified by another injury. So it's not looking very rosy for Everton as they register their second defeat of the season.
That was to Decore, that injury, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a groin or a hamstring injury.
Yeah, that's another big loss for them. Frank Lampard and Everton are really in the struggle bus at the minute. As expected, though, to be honest, because they really have not done much in terms of transfers in the window.
They've done business, but again, it's questionable business. I don't see the logic of signing Conor Cody on loan. As much as he was a good defender for Wolves, you could probably go find, someone better for a permanent. If they're struggling with money, because I know with the new stadium that there's reported debts with the club, so whether they're strapped for cash,
it's quite possible.
Yeah.
Quite possible. It's good to see Aston Villa get off the mark, though.
Yeah.
Steven Gerrard gets his first win of the season at home, behind the fans. What I've noticed so far about the Premier League is a lot of the good results are coming for teams at home.
Yeah.
They're like behind their own fans to start the season. A lot of teams are struggling away.
Unless you're Manchester United, and then you're struggling in both.
There is that.
But no, Villa's good fortune was topped off with a second goal from, I believe, I was going to say Buendia. I think it was Buendia. After he came on in the second half, hoping to, he can carry on some good form after a very underwhelming season after his transfer from Norwich. But, the game wasn't as comfortable as Villa probably would have liked it. Still struggling from set pieces, as they have been, since last season. And then a Digne own goal, who I'm pretty sure is Everton's top goal scorer this season, and he's not even played a game.
Yeah, there is that.
But Everton just look... It's just shambolic, to be fair, from Everton at the minute. There's no creativity going forward, there's no structure in midfield, and there's no soundness in defence. And again, Pickford just fills nobody with confidence. It's just a poor showing from Everton, yet again.
Yeah, it's not a great start for Everton and Frank Lampard whatsoever. Obviously, they've got a lot of problems at the minute in terms of their lineups. They're having to field players that Lampard probably doesn't feel too confident in, like Patterson. I mean, in terms of the actual team, it looks like if you look at just their squad as a whole, it's bare bones. They're really struggling with to get players in by the looks of things, like decent players. Obviously, they signed that Onana. They did bring in Tarkovsky, which I do think will be a good signing for him. Obviously, as you say, they brought in Connor Cody on loan.
Yeah.
But in terms of where I think they're going to really struggle is their attacking lineup. Like they've got Gray, Gordon, and McNeil that started as a front three, and they didn't really pose any problems from what I've seen. I have seen the highlights of the game. They didn't really pose too many problems for Aston Villa. It seemed, as you say, it seemed quite comfortable until that own goal.
Yeah.
But even then, that was in the 87th minute, so that's just a consolation, if anything, for Everton.
And it's even the players that they bring off the bench, Tom Davies and Dele Alli, other than Onana, who's one of their more promising signings. But after 7 months at Everton, they're looking to already get rid of Dele Alli, which shows just
Yeah,
how big of a drop off that Dele Alli has, going from the heights of playing unbelievable under Pochettino at Tottenham to falling out of favour with Mourinho. And Mourinho said it best. I seen an interview, or it wasn't an interview, but it was a talk between the two on, I think it was the
I know
All or
exactly
Nothing.
what you're on about. Yeah,
It's the
I've
saying
seen
that
it.
he'll regret not reaching the heights that he could have, and he should
I think,
demand more from himself, and he hasn't. And now he's being linked with a loan to Besiktas in Turkey. It's just
yeah, I think the problem with Dele Alli is I think he has all the talent in the world. He doesn't have the motivation and the drive
oh,
to do
definitely
it.
all the gear and no idea. It just seems to be with Dele Alli.
Pretty
And
much.
it's like people say, oh, that his hamstrings haven't helped him. He's had a lot of injuries, but even then, when he has been fit, he's not exactly proved anything.
Yeah,
What I am also going
exactly.
to add is it's been confirmed that new Aston Villa signing Diego Carlos will miss a big, big, big chunk of the season with a ruptured Achilles tendon,
Yeah, I saw that as well.
which is a painful one. So we wish him a speedy recovery. It's
Indeed,
been a few
indeed.
big injuries in the first opening 2 games of the season.
Yeah,
You had obviously Everton losing Godfrey last season, and now Villa losing Carlos.
yeah, it's not good, but that comes down to well, for me, if you get an injury in the early in the season, that comes down to a couple of things. One, it can just be sheer bad luck because
Yeah.
one tackle can send you out at any point, but another is bad preparation as well in
Mm.
terms of if you're if you haven't done the haven't had the right preseason that you should have had, um, then these things can happen, unfortunately. But that
Mm-hmm.
is we play. They play in the toughest league in the world, so these things will happen.
Yep. But yeah, that pretty much rounds off the first fixture of the weekend in what was a very good win for Villa. Shall we
Aye,
shall we move on
agree.
to Southampton Leeds?
Let's do it.
Now, I can't really say much about the Southampton Leeds game. I've only seen highlights, and from that, it just looked like a calamitous defense and a defensive showing from both sides. And I think that's where
Yeah,
both teams are going to struggle this season.
yeah. I haven't. Like I say, I've only seen the highlights, but in terms of the result itself, I actually think it's a good result for Leeds, and it's a poor result for Southampton. Even though Leeds were 2-0 up and
Mm,
cruising with a Rodrigo double, um, Southampton's one of those teams for me that you can never write them off. So it doesn't surprise me that they did come back and get a point in the end, but it is a good point for me for Leeds because I do
yeah.
think they'll look back at games like this and away to Southampton. That's a good point, even though it will feel like 3 points dropped. It is a good point in the grand scheme of things. And for Southampton at home against Leeds, who, let's be honest, really struggled last season, even though they've basically rewrote the code, this new manager at Leeds, and he's got a whole new philosophy, a whole new batch of players to play in certain positions. I still think it's a good point for Leeds and a bad point for Southampton in the whole grand scheme of things.
I can't say I agree with how, as it looked like Leeds should have really seen out a 2-0 win. I think I, as a Leeds fan, would probably feel more annoyed that we have dropped them points, because it's going to be them sort of points, if they are to be in a relegation battle this season, which I still think they will be. Dropping them points to Southampton is a big loss, because they're going to need to pick up all the points they can get early doors. It's better to start. It's better to start well and finish poorly than start poorly and have to drag yourself through that tougher period of the season where, yeah, you've got games thick and fast, you've got games in cups, and the depth of Leeds is going to be called into question.
I do think that comes down to what I felt would be Leeds' biggest loss this season, and that is in their defence. Losing someone like Calvin Phillips, that's just your anchor, your safety net, as it were. They don't really have anyone in that position anymore to protect the back four, like a Calvin Phillips, a Declan Rice, and N'Golo Kante. He was their safety net that got him out of a lot of trouble last season. He was probably one of the reasons why they didn't get relegated, because the games that he was fit, he did play very well in. That's why he got his big money move to City. But I think they do look weak at the back. You've got Pascal Struijk, he's not the most mobile player. You've got Llorente, who's half decent centre back. Koch doesn't fill me with confidence, and Christensen
is a new guy on the block. It's
unknown, yeah. And then you've got Rocket and Adams just in front of him, and again, two new boys. You don't really know what you're going to get from them, but it doesn't like they're defensively sound. The one thing I will say though is it's good to see Rodrigo getting two.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up. He's having a blinder of a start of a season. Let's just hope he can carry it on. Yeah,
exactly. If Leeds are going to stay in the Premier League, it will be goals from Rodrigo, Bamford, Harrison. They've got some half decent kids off the bench as well in Somerville and Greenwood.
It looked like Bamford pulled up though, didn't he? I think he came off after 28 minutes. Is that another injury?
It's possible. It is possible because he came off Dan James.
Let's hope that's not too much of a serious one, because Leeds are going to miss him if that is the case.
Yeah. In terms of Southampton, I think they have they have an okay team as well. Like, just like Aston Villa and Everton as well. These two teams don't. When you look at their lineups, they don't fill me with confidence. These are going to break into the top 10? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like these teams are just going to be battling out, taking points off of each other. It's going to be the big games for them is when they play teams that are around about them.
Yeah. Shall we move on to arguably probably his game of the week? Another London club claiming that title, Arsenal Leicester.
Let's do it.
4-2. What a result for Mikel Arteta's Gunners. And
Gabriel Jesus is off and running.
Well, there was more than one Gabby score. Martinelli keeps his goal scoring form up, and Gabriel Jesus adds four goal contributions to his game, getting assists for both.
Yep, 2 assists and 2 goals. And the crazy thing and the scary thing is,
he could have had more.
In his interview, he literally said he could have done better.
He said he was disappointed.
Yeah, he said it was a half decent performance from him. Even though he opens his account in the most stupidest way, what a finish that was!
Oh, that was an unbelievable goal. I remember I was watching back the highlights to talk about the game, and my word, what a finish! What I will say is that Willem Saliba own goal, I wouldn't really worry about. What I would worry about is then James Maddison scored in the 74th minute. That is shocking goalkeeping from Aaron Ramsdale.
It is.
For one, you should never be beating your near post, and secondly, they should not be able to put it through your legs from that range. It's just poor in my opinion. I've always said as a
Yeah.
goalkeeper you should never get beat at your near post.
Once again, though, when we first spoke about like where Arsenal would finish and stuff like that, and we said how good of the transfer window they've had, etc. Um, their main issue would be why they won't challenge a City or a Liverpool yet is the defense.
Yeah.
I think they've got a great growing attacking lineup, and you can see that in Jesus and Martinelli.
They remind me very much what Liverpool were in that 17-18 season, where they could go out and put four past anyone, which this Arsenal team look like they could go and do. Like
Yeah,
they just go out and outscore teams. There'll be games where it'll be up to a Jesus or a Martinelli to drag them through. As you know, that defense does have holes in it.
oh, definitely, definitely. In terms of Leicester, I think it's one of those where you're playing a red hot Arsenal. They didn't start well at all. Leicester, Arsenal took the game to them. Jesus pretty much shut the door on them after 35 minutes, and
Yeah,
at that point you're thinking, right, it's going to be 4-5-6 here. But they weathered the storm a bit. Leicester got to halftime only 2-0 down, which is something for them. And then obviously Saliba scores that own goal and it gives them confidence. But then 2 minutes later, Xhaka
from
puts the ball in the back of the net.
a
And
calamitous claim from Danny Ward. I worry for Leicester if they're going into the rest of the season having Danny Ward as their starting goalkeeper. He
yeah,
does not fill me with confidence between the sticks for Leicester. I mean,
it comes back to their transfer business, though. I mean, so it's the 18th right now when we're recording this episode. There is just over a week left of the transfer window, and it's crunch time for clubs like a Leicester, like a Everton, Villa, etc. If you're gonna do something, you're gonna do business, you have to
do
get
it
it
quick.
done now.
Yeah,
You
you
have
have
to
to
get
get it
it
done
done
quick.
now. But in terms of the result as a whole, for me, Arsenal fantastic once again. Um, they've got a very, very good team this season. They're just showing why we had them so high up
Yeah,
in our rankings. Leicester, I think it's one of those where they'll probably just be like brush it off and go again because, as I say, you're playing a red hot Arsenal at the Emirates. First game for those new fans to see the players like a Jesus, like a Zinchenko, and well, they got their money's worth on
well,
Saturday.
definitely. Was
Certainly got their money's worth.
It's definitely a performance that Mikel Arteta will hope to get from his players more. Shall we move on to Brighton Newcastle? Can't really say much about this game other than
No,
Brighton's worries up front have just shown why they haven't started Dennis Undav is beyond me. They had 13 shots in this game, and it was a game that Brighton dominated.
well, that's what I was about to say. I was about to say, like, apparently Pope just had an absolute wonder
Worldy,
class
yeah.
for Newcastle. Like, it was just one of those where the ball just would not fall in the back of the net for Brighton, thanks to Pope. And we know how good Pope can be as a goalkeeper. And obviously, in terms of the World Cup just being around the corner,
These are the
performances,
yeah.
these are the performances that people like Pope are going to have to put in. And that's why Newcastle signed him, because to not only stay up but to compete in the Premier League, you need to have a good stability, and that starts from your goalkeeper. In terms of the actual result, I mean, it's not really too much you can say on it because it wasn't a live game. It was a 3 o'clock kickoff. As you say, Brighton dominated, just couldn't get the ball past Pope. Newcastle didn't seem to really create much at all. It seemed like one of those games where both teams would have been happy with a point, but Brighton
Yeah.
obviously would have preferred to come away with 3. Newcastle would have been definitely happy with a point.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it'll be a result that neither of them will turn their noses up at.
No,
The
both
Amex seems to be a
undefeated.
tough place to go this season. It was a tough place to go last season as well. So
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's why a lot of people tip Brighton to finish higher than expected this
yeah,
season, just because they're going to be tough to beat, regardless of who they play. They are going to be tough to beat. They're well drilled, well coached. They have a good lineup. They don't have anyone crazy, but they're like a Brentford. They all
they
just
play for
work
each
hard
other.
for each other. Yeah, 100%. That's where I think Newcastle could actually fall down at the minute, because that's the problem when you bring in new money and you bring in all these different players and stuff like that. You have to make sure that they're going to work hard for each other, but it seems like there's just a few too many individuals in Newcastle still.
What I will say though, it's still early days. There's time in this season to grow. I don't I can't
Oh,
see
absolutely.
Newcastle getting themselves into a relegation scrap. I think
Oh
that's
no,
that's above
no,
them
no.
at this point now. But I think if they can finish 10th, 11th, I don't think that's a season that they'd be too disheartened with.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. For
Mm.
me, um, they have a they have a half decent lineup. I still think if they had more time in the window, they probably would do more business. They might still do more business. It wouldn't surprise me if Newcastle signed 4 players on deadline day.
Yeah,
That would be such a money thing for them to do out of nowhere. But you have to get, as you say, you have to get the right players in. But
I said the
the good
areas
thing,
they probably look to strengthen are left back because I can't see a world where playing Dan Burn as a left back is sustainable. I think if he did start left back, I'm just going off the lineup sheet here, and they need they need an out and out striker in my opinion, or
see,
maybe a proper winger because you can't start Miguel Almiron anymore. I don't know
for
what's
me,
happened to him.
I think I think they've got a good striker in Callum Wilson. He just needs the service. I think they need to bring in someone like they want James Maddison. I think he'd be perfect for Newcastle, because they need to create more chances, and they need that player in the midfield that's going to pick up the ball and find Callum Wilson open. Do you know what I mean, in the
Yeah,
box? A player like that has a good eye for a pass. As you say, they have good players around. They have Joe Linton, who's now a makeshift centre mid, who's
that's where he
coming to his
started, didn't
own.
he?
Yeah, he did.
Started in
Yeah,
midfield.
yeah. You got obviously Saint Maximan, who on his day can perform, but just his end product is just very, very questionable. Joe Willock is one of those where some games he'll perform, some games he won't. And as I say, Callum Wilson, if you do give Callum Wilson a chance, he will put the ball in the back of the net for you. You just
Yeah,
need to give him chances. If you look at the stats of the game, they only had 4 shots on target and 4 shots, sorry, and only 1 on target. So that means they're not creating much at all from that midfield. And you can see that from the lineup, because you've got Joe Linton, who's basically been told to be a bully in the centre mid. You've got Guimaraes, who will basically do defensive work. So you've got 2 defensive minded ish players. And then you've got Joe Willock, who it all relies on him basically. And obviously he's just not doing the biz at the minute.
yeah.
But I still think
They'll
both
sort it
teams,
out. I think
yeah, I
both
think
teams will sort it out.
oh, absolutely. I think Brighton are on a great trajectory, and I think Newcastle, they're growing slowly. Problem is for Eddie Howe, results like that don't actually help him. He needs
Yeah.
to start. He needs to start picking up more points, even though that's now 4 points from 2 games. As we say, we got to look at it as a 2 game thing.
Mhm.
There'll be no worries. Eddie Howe will take positives from the game, and he'll see things that he now needs to improve on.
Yeah.
And yeah, they'll
I
be fine.
think that's really much, really all we can really talk about. For
Pretty much,
yeah,
yes.
not much. Neither of us got to watch the game. The highlights were very slim, so yeah, we'll move on to a very, very emphatic win for Manchester City at home against Bournemouth.
Yeah, this was always on the cards. I think right off the bat, the only The maddest thing for me was that Haaland did not get on the score sheet.
Haaland had a
I
very quiet game. As much as people say, "Oh, well, he got the assist," it was a very Lukaku-esque performance of very few touches.
Yeah, I saw a stat. Apparently, he made
9.
two.
He had 9
Well,
touches. Bearing
what I
kickoff.
saw, what I saw, he made completed 2 passes and got an assist, and that was pretty much his game.
Mm. From what I've seen,
Which
it was 9 touches. Obviously, the 2 passes and the assist. That was it. It was a game that was very, very quiet for the Norwegian striker. Whether it was, the service wasn't there. I know there was a chance that Phil Foden had where, 9 times out of 10 he looks for that extra pass and he didn't. So, but it was an emphatic win for City, and I don't think it'll be one that they're going to be too displeased about.
No, not at
No
all.
teams.
I'll be.
Go on.
I was say I'll be honest. If the fact Haaland basically does nothing and ambles around in this game, if he goes into like a Chelsea, Arsenal, or Liverpool game and puts two, no one's gonna care.
Yeah.
Those are the games he's going to be questioned on. It's not these ones.
Plus, it's not like they missed. It's like they missed him not scoring. A 4-0 win. Ilkay Gundogan with a brilliant finish. Kevin De Bruyne showing why he's the best midfielder in the world with an outside of the foot finish.
Hmm.
And Phil Foden scored from very sloppy play from Bournemouth. And then can't really say much about the own goal. Just ricochets off Jefferson Lerma.
Yeah, for me, it's one of those where I've obviously, as a West Ham fan, I've been on the receiving end of this, where you watch your team just get dominated. Obviously, we didn't concede as many goals as Bournemouth, but you kind of expect that from a team that's just come up away to City at the Etihad. They want to put on a show for their fans. Like I said, a lot of these first games of the season do seem to be when the teams go at home, they'll put on a show for their home fans because they want to make a statement, especially City.
Wish we could do the
Um,
fucking same.
but yeah, there's not really too much to say on it. What I will say is it is good to see Foden getting back on the score sheet. I still think he's one of those players for me that he doesn't play as much as he probably should do at City, but he's like comfortable at City and he's still one of their best players. And
I think he really needs to have a good season because I thought he was quite. As much as he won Young Player of the Year, I don't think that was a deserved Young Player of the Year. I could name 2 or 3 that were better than him that season. And I think it is time for him to have a proper breakout season where he's getting goals, he's getting assists, he's showing what Phil Foden can do.
yeah,
And I think
problem
he
is,
lacks a bit of that individuality that you don't really see as much in City unless you are Kevin De Bruyne or a Mahrez.
but that
City's a
that's
very well-oiled machine, and it's shown in the results.
but that is where my question mark lies with that statement is how do you if you're like it's like if you're in a team with Kevin De Bruyne, how
Shine.
do you shine? Do you know what I mean? Especially when Foden pretty much plays the same role as De Bruyne. That's why for a lot of the season he got pulled out wide to try and get him like away from Kevin De Bruyne because there's no point putting those two players next to each other. Like Gundogan's different because you know what you get with Gundogan. He's going to be someone that's just going to be a box to box player. He's going to make those tackles
Mm.
in the deep end, and he's
He's
going
the
to,
general of that team.
yeah, pretty much. But I think as a whole, when you look at Man City, it's what you see, what you get again.
Yeah.
There isn't too much to say on it. I mean, if they'd have drawn 0-0, we'd be talking for hours about this. But
Oh, 100%.
it's one of those where City just have come back into the Premier League and are just doing what they need to do. There's no
City do what City do best, and that's score goals and win games.
Yep, pretty much. Another clean sheet as well. I mean, if you look at their back four lineup, I mean, you've got Nathan Ake, who literally barely played a minute last season, then was close to signing
for
for,
Chelsea.
For Arsenal and Chelsea. Um, and now he's starting because of injuries, but they're keeping clean sheets with him
Yeah.
and just doing. I mean, they haven't really had a test yet. I mean, West Ham should have been more of a test for them, but didn't turn out to be. And Bournemouth would have gone into that game going, we'll give it a go, see how long we can hold them out for, and then if it's still 0-0 with 20 minutes to go, we'll have a go at them. because the fans will be on their back. But when City gets an early goal at home against Bournemouth, you know where the result's going.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
it's, for me, it's always a case with City is when they get one, they're not just getting one.
Yeah. You tend to find if City score, it's going to be an emphatic scoreline unless they get beat. And it's
Yeah,
very rare
unless
that they get beat.
unless they're against, like, I think the only team that really rivals them in terms of when they play them is Liverpool.
Yeah.
If City score first, Liverpool can always come back. There isn't many teams in the Premier League that can say that if City score first, we can come back at them.
Well, you've seen that last season in the 2-2. It kind of just went City, Liverpool, City, Liverpool. You know,
Yeah.
it was a game where I think Foden scored a brace and Salah scored a brace. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's one of those for me where if you score first against City, they've always got the opportunity to come back. But if City score first against 99% of the Premier League teams,
they're winning that game. Yeah.
they're pretty much winning that game. But as we say, a good result for City. Bournemouth now, that they've obviously picked up a win in their first game, which it meant that this game was like a nothing scapegoat game for them, because they're now they have 3 points on the board. Do you know what I mean? They're sitting 11th. They'll take that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This one of those where they'll just rub it off. We'll go again. These aren't the games they have to win to stay in the Premier League. Let's be honest. So.
Shall we move on to the Wolves Fulham game then? A very unenthusiastic result. Again, another 3:00 0-0.
Yes, this one seemed even more of a dud than the Brighton Newcastle one. Sometimes you get a 0-0 and people say, "Wow, what a 0-0 that was." This one was not one of those cases.
This was a 0-0, and fuck me, I've wasted 90 minutes of my life watching this.
Pretty much, yeah. I think the only thing that really happened in this game was Mitrovic missing the penalty.
Yeah.
And that is a big moment.
What
And
I
like,
do
I
want to
can't,
say very quickly on terms of Mitrovic, and I'm going to talk about this more on Darwin Núñez's red card, but if Darwin Núñez gets sent off for that, Mitrovic gets sent off for that on Morgan Gibbs-White, because it's the exact same. It's
I
putting
think
your head in someone's face, whether it's, a headbutt or you're just aggressively pushing them with your head. Both are red cards. Either you send them both off or you don't send either of them off. And the red card was the right decision for Núñez, but I think Mitrovic has to walk for that as well. It's unnecessary aggression.
I agree, but what I will say on the matter is Mitrovic's was more of a brush off in terms of his head movement. Núñez's was a real aggressive, I'm moving my head into your head sort of thing. And I think Morgan Gibbs-White didn't make as much of it as Joachim Andersen did at the time. And
Joachim Andersen hit the floor like a sack of spuds.
we'll cover that anyway.
Yeah.
Let's carry on what we're doing here. So as I say, Mitrovic obviously missed a penalty, which is obviously the biggest moment in the game, probably one of the only moments in the game. What I will say is I'm going to come back to what I said in the last episode when Mitrovic obviously got 2 against Liverpool, which was great for him for his confidence. That's going to hurt his confidence.
Oh, massively.
And that's a bad thing for Fulham, because as I keep preaching, you need Mitrovic to score goals to stay in the Premier League. If he scores that penalty, they're on 6 points and they're flying, and that's a fantastic start for Fulham.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Sorry, not 6 points, 4 points, because they drew to Liverpool.
Yeah. It's still more points than they need, because now they're set on 2 points.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're still unbeaten in the Premier League. Away to Wolves, they'll probably take that, but for Fulham, you probably want to see Mitrovic putting that in the back of the net, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of Wolves, I mean, in terms of possession, they dominated the game, but they didn't really create much at all. They only had 1 shot on target all game. I think they need Raul Jimenez back ASAP, and if they expect a long layout for Jimenez, they need to get into the market for a striker.
Yeah.
Because nothing seems to be happening for them. I think they have a solid midfield pairing. I think they have a half decent defense that's like young but learning. I think they've got a good goalkeeper in Jose Sarr. I think they've got fantastic players in Neto Pedence and Morgan Gibbs-White. I just think they need that top man.
Yeah. They have just
That's
announced the signing of Matheus Nunes from, I believe, Sporting, which I think is a great signing. A player that was heavily linked with Liverpool, and we just didn't bite the bullet and take him. But he'll be a great signing for Wolves, and it's another Portuguese player they can add to the ever-growing list of Portuguese Wolves players.
Yeah, they found another one.
They found another one.
There's always Portuguese talent out there, and they'll find them.
But there's not really much we can say about the Wolves game. It was a 0-0.
Yeah, a 0-0. They both sit next to each other in the table, 2 points and 1 point. Obviously, not a great start for Wolves. Start of the season, lost to Leeds, a game they should have been winning, and then home against Fulham, a just promoted team, but obviously high on confidence after the Liverpool result. As they should be doing better. I think they will be fine. Just need that end product.
Yeah.
If they get Jimenez back ASAP, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah. Shall we move on to the game I've been so excited to talk about?
Let's do it.
Brentford 4, Manchester United 0. Now, this is not the first time we've seen a team like Brentford put 4 past Manchester United. We've seen it last season with Brighton putting 4 past them. And you've just got to ask what is happening at Manchester United at the minute. Because nothing they do seems to work.
I agree.
You look at the way they set up. Obviously, they start Maguire and they start Eriksen as a holding midfielder, a role I think I can quite confidently say, never played in his life. I don't think I've ever seen Eriksen play that deep, even at Inter Milan. The way Manchester United set out to play, play out from the back, just played into Brentford's hands. And you've seen it against Brighton. The setup of Martinez passing it to De Gea and De Gea passing it into the 6 got picked up straight away against Brighton with Trossard having an early shot at it. And I think it happened again in the Brighton game where they lost possession again. And it happened 3 or 4 times in this game where they lost possession, and then it was eventually their undoing when Mbeumo, I think it was, or Jensen scored after pickpocketing Christian Eriksen.
Yep.
I will also say I never want to hear anything about the Glazers being the issue with Manchester United at the minute when you see players putting that sort of performance out. At the end of the day, the Glazers aren't the one that coach the players. The Glazers aren't the ones that pick the team, and the Glazers aren't the one that essentially play the game. None of them players on that pitch yesterday looked like on Saturday or Sunday, looked like they were at all interested. David De Gea, he has to be taking bribes. That shot from De Silva in the first half is shambolic. It was low, it wasn't exactly powerful, and he's let it through his hands. It's just shit. It's just shit. And Martinez proven again, why have you spent 51 million on a 5'9" centre-back? If you were going to play him in any games, you don't play him in the games like the Brighton and Brentford, where they've got physical, tall players. Welbeck had so much fun with that defence in the Brighton game, and Ivan Toney made Martinez look like his pet. It was embarrassing having someone that small go up against Toney.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that team. There's no spine in Manchester United. There's no DNA, and we've seen that they've conceded 6 goals in 2 games. And there'll be people saying, "Oh, well, the recruitment's not good enough. We've not signed the players Ten Hag wanted." He signed Malacia, didn't play Malacia until the 60th or 70th minute. He signed Martinez, who has looked like a lost puppy in that defence. He signed Eriksen, who was someone that he wanted, and has since used him in 2 very, very polar opposite roles as a false 9 and a 6 and a double pivot. There's just no consistency in his tactics. and I could go on all day. You know,
I
they
I'm
want
just
to
waiting for you to finish.
they want to sign Frankie De Jong, and they're adamant that they're going to sign Frankie De Jong. De Jong has told them on several occasions that, look, I don't want to come play for Manchester United. I would rather stay in a club that owes me £17 million. And that speaks
Mhm.
volumes. Adrian Rabiot has turned down Manchester United, a man who has done next to nothing in the last 3 years for Juventus. And to say that you have no other alternative other than panic buying when you don't get Frankie de Jong, you are the only ones to blame. They have tried to force a man to sign, which was they're trying to sign people that don't care for the club. And we've seen it with the likes of Memphis Depay, couldn't give a rat's ass. Angel Di Maria, who once said that the number 7 was just a number and he didn't care what it meant at Manchester United. And they're going to go try sign someone who really just doesn't want to come to the club. And if it does, he'll go for money. It's just... There's so many illogical things going on at United at the minute, and I don't think the Glazers are for one to blame for it. You know, they're not great owners, and I know what shit owners look like. We had it with Gillette and Hicks. But you have to, the players have to take blame, and the staff have to take the blame. It can't all be shunted onto the owners.
Okay, right. I'm gonna cut you off there. Right. So I actually watched this game, and I do agree with 95% of what you've just said. Basically, what I will say though is touching on the performance of Manchester United. Obviously, it was pitiful. There's no denying it. You lose 4-0 to Brentford. I believe Brentford done their homework absolutely perfectly. They saw exactly how Man United wanted to play, and they absolutely punished them. You could see from minute one that Jensen was set to pressure Ericsson high up the pitch and not allow him time on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And he did exactly that, obviously, for their second goal. I do believe that De Gea's mistake in the 10th minute on the De Silva shot really set the tone for the game, and it just was not what Man United needed. It set the tone for it, and it all went downhill from there. So it does start with the De Gea mistake. Obviously, it wasn't all De Gea's fault.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
they conceded 4 goals for a reason. But in terms of the goals they conceded, I'll be honest, they didn't look like scoring at any one particular moment. I'd say I don't think that Raya had a specific save to make that
Yeah.
really, like, for me, Rashford is absolutely useless. I think this was his moment to show that he could actually do it, and he's just not. Bruno just again ambled around, didn't really care, got aggressive, didn't care. I mean, they did try. I'll give Ten Hag his props. He realised that he couldn't play Fred and McTominay together, and he tried something different with Ericsson. And on another day, it might have worked if Ericsson gets time on the ball. But Brentford set up perfectly. They
Yeah.
knew exactly what they had to do to shut them down. I mean, in terms of, we could talk for hours about how
Oh, yeah.
bad their defense is. There's no denying how bad it is. Maguire is awful. 5'9" Martinez just absolutely pointless.
They targeted Martinez all game. They knew who to target.
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing. You've spoke on how bad United were. I want to touch on how
Oh,
good
yeah.
Brentford
I
was.
wasn't saying that this was a case of how shit United were. Brentford set up and played United like a fiddle.
Oh,
United fell into Brentford's hands, and Brentford took every opportunity that they got.
oh,
And 4-0
absolutely.
didn't flatter them.
Oh no, not at all. Not at all. I think they played perfectly there. I think in terms of how hot it was in that game as well, Brentford just ran their socks off, and they earned every minute or sorry inch of that pitch that they earned to play football. There were times where they did sit back and allow Manchester United to have the ball, but they allowed Manchester United to have the ball in areas that they wasn't worried about whatsoever. As
Yeah.
soon as Man United crossed the halfway line with that ball, they pounced on them,
Mm.
and they literally the counter attack was done in devastating fashion, and that just it summed it up with the Mbuemo goal where Ivan Toney beautifully played up inch perfect pass, and Mbuemo takes that perfect touch with his right foot onto his left foot
And puts
away
yeah.
from Maguire. Like just a standout performance from Brentford in all aspects. What I will say about Manchester United is they have problems that go far and beyond, like you say, the owners. They
Oh
have
yeah.
the problem with Manchester United for me as a whole is Ten Hag has inherited a bunch of players that just don't care.
I think I saw a
Yeah.
stat after the game that Brentford ran 13.8 kilometres more than Manchester United's players,
That is correct. And
and
Ten Hag
that is
got them into
embarrassing.
well, Ten Hag cancelled their day off on Sunday and he made them run 13.8 kilometres more
Yeah.
in training because that is exactly what Brentford ran more than them Saturday evening.
Mm.
But the thing is, though, that shows what kind of manager Ten Hag is. And I do believe they have a good manager in Ten Hag. I really do. I just think he has inherited a group of players that just doesn't care. And then he is not being backed by the owners to get the players in that he actually wants and being given the money. I do believe there's something we don't know for sure what's going on. Obviously, the Glazers are apparently going to now sell a huge portion of Manchester United because they've had enough, basically.
What I
And
will interrupt and say though is you say that he's not being backed. He's going for targets that don't want to join. You can't then say he's not being backed. You just can't throw money and expect people to come all the time. Yes, money talks, but they wanted Rabiot as an alternate to De Jong, and Rabiot said no. They wanted Arnautovic, and just because of something that happened, whenever it was, they decided to say no.
see, this is where I
But
actually disbelieve these are Ten Hag's signings because
well, he said
if
he
you look,
wants De Jong. He specifically said
oh
he
yeah,
wants
De
De
Jong,
Jong,
yeah,
and De Jong
De
doesn't want to
Jong's
come.
different. Well, De Jong is different. One, he obviously he is owed £17 million by Barcelona. Two, I saw at the weekend he didn't get a single minute for Barcelona, and then he came out and said that he's had enough and wants to leave Barcelona. So they could still get their man by the end of the window. That's De Jong on his own is not going to change Manchester United
Oh yeah.
fortunes. Let's be honest. But for me, as I said, I think Ten Hag has just inherited a group of players that because if you look at when Solskjaer took over, he also inherited a group of players that didn't care, and he slowly changed it up, and in the end, the best he could do was third place. And let's be honest, Man
Second.
United now second will take that in a nutshell. From where they are now, but they decided that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was never going to get them challenging, and they wanted to go a different route, which has obviously backfired on them massively.
I think you also look at some of the signings that they've been linked with, and apparently rumours of bids that they've put in. They've had a bid of 130 million euros for João Felix rejected because it doesn't
Yep.
even come close to his release clause of the 360 million or 350 million. They've also put a 50 million euro bid in for Matheus Cunha from Atletico Madrid. Why? These are two players in positions that you don't need. Matheus Cunha isn't a defensive midfielder.
But this is all, like you said, the key word there is rumours. I've seen so many rumours over this transfer window, and it's one of those where I don't rate a team on their rumours. I rate a team on the signings they actually do make. And as it stands, Manchester United have made, for me, two poor signings so far.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're just getting adapted to the Premier League is a different question. But for me, Manchester United need an absolute shake-up fully. I think Ten Hag has got a huge job on his hands. I think, honestly, like I said in the last episode, of the pool of managers that were available, that was the best option. There was no other better option for Manchester United than Ten Hag. He does have a good DNA and he does have a good drive ethic. Like I said, he wouldn't have cancelled their no other manager in the last 4 or 5 years at Man United would have cancelled their day off and brought them all into training and made them run the exact amount.
Yeah.
Like, he was just as angry as the Manchester United fans, Ten Hag. He was not expecting that whatsoever.
What I
He
will
looked shell-shocked,
what I
if
will
anything.
say is there have been, chatterings around the club coming from leaks in the dressing room. Whether these are true, I don't know. It's just from what I've heard that Manchester United are already unsure on Ten Hag, which I think is ludicrous if that is true. Because essentially, you sack him, who'd you go for?
Problem is, as a manager, you know that your results just stem where you lie with the club. You have like, if you say it's like a percentage of 100%, you'd say right now, if you look at their pre-season, he was probably at like 85%, and they were like, okay, yep, this guy, yep, we've done well here. He's showing in results pre-season that he's doing something. He's probably gone down to like a 40% right now.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get worse for Man United because as we look forward to this week's round of fixtures, they have Liverpool.
To be fair, that's not even a guaranteed win for us. We've been shit recently.
I mean, it's one of those where I think Man United would rather not play Liverpool at this point, but...
Well, apparently they're set to try get the game cancelled with... They're planning on emptying the stadium, which they'll empty the stadium in shirts that they bought from the club.
I mean, the game will still get played.
Well, but if the players can't get into the stadium, it'll either get delayed like it did last year. But it's more of the same. It's if they want to try have protests, they'll do it in shirts that they bought from the club stadium, which is giving the Glazers more money. It's such a what's the word? It's such a contradiction. Or I want the Glazers out, but I'm still gonna buy the shirt off the club website, which will give them money. Then you're just showing that you've not got an issue with them. If you're gonna do a protest, you do it properly.
I think we're going way off topic here. We're here to talk about the fixtures, not the Glazers and the protests. What I will say to round off this fixture for me, Brentford, fantastic result. They did their homework. They knew exactly how Man United wanted to play. They shut it down beautifully. They scored 4 great goals. Shambolic defending from Manchester United. The DNA of Manchester United needs to change ASAP in terms of how much do they actually want to wear that shirt and run for that shirt.
100%.
And there isn't much more to say on it.
More case of new season, same Manchester United again. We'll move on. We'll go on to your boys, Forest West Ham.
Why did I say move on?
I'll let you take the floor with this one.
Okay, so this one is right. This one I've heard from different people, different adjectives to the game. Some of us, like me, I believe West Ham played very, very poorly in this game. I don't think we worked hard enough. Nottingham Forest worked harder to get every inch of the pitch they wanted to play their football. Yes, the goal they scored was very lucky, but you make your own luck in the Premier League. They were making chances, then they should have been 2-0 up if it wasn't for an inch offside decision. Again, another deflected into his path, but Nottingham Forest, in terms of the first half, were the better team. West Ham as a whole did create chances. We obviously had Benarama disallowed goal. Now, I'm going to touch on this disallowed goal just slightly. I'm not going to go into crazy detail about it. I'm just going to say my feelings on it. I do believe it was an unfair disallowed goal, just simply because when Antonio's running, you can see that the defender steps to the left just slightly to block off his path. So if anything, he's actually trying to block off Antonio, not Antonio's trying to barge him out of the way. Now, this can be seen in so many different ways. Obviously, the Forest fans will argue that Antonio just barged him over. West Ham fans will argue that my point that I've just made. But for me, I think it's one of those where I'm not surprised it got disallowed, but I also wouldn't have been surprised if it would have been given if I was a neutral. But as a West Ham fan, I would have liked them to have looked at it a bit further. They don't really look at the fact that he's stepping across Antonio. Antonio's just trying to get into the space to make that space. And obviously then you've got Declan Rice who turns, plays a beautiful pass to Benarama inside the box and he slots it away coolly. But obviously in terms of the whole, I can see why it was disallowed, but it's one of those where I'm not surprised it was disallowed in terms of the VAR these days. But at that point, Forest deserved to go 1-0 up at half time. We had not played well whatsoever. As I said, we had that disallowed goal. We had Benarama, who had a rattler from about 25 yards that hit the bar and bounced on the line. It couldn't have bounced over the line. It bounced on the line. I think only a quarter of the ball bounced over the line, which obviously, as we all know, is not a goal. What I will say, though, is Forest have just shown how well they have done in the transfer window this season because they brought in Dean Henderson, who had an absolute blinder.
Yeah.
He performed absolutely out of his skin. I think as a whole, Forest played well. I think they work hard. Don't get me wrong. I think they're another team like Brentford last season that they're going to rely a lot on their work ethic to get them results like this. Obviously, we'll go into the second half. I've already touched on the Johnson disallowed goal, but we obviously win a penalty in the 65th minute, West Ham, which is correctly given as a penalty. The only question mark I have on that is
why is it not a red card?
Why is it not a straight red card? Yeah, the ball is going into the back of the net. I know Henderson is behind him, but if you look at the trajectory of where that ball is going and where it hits his hand, Henderson is not getting to that. That is ending up in the back of the net.
I think the saving grace is the fact that just Henderson's behind him. I think that is the only reason. I know, like, my uncle's a Nottingham Forest fan, and we watched the second half, and I haven't seen the angle of like where the ball was going, but I can see Dean Henderson's behind him. He's putting his arms out to make a save, so you don't know whether he gets a hand to it or not.
I agree you don't, but
it's just, I think it's more the fact that the keeper is behind him, and then it's the question: is it a goal scoring opportunity then because the keeper's behind him? Which, in my opinion, it should be a red card.
Like, well, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's another one of those where, like the Benarama disallowed goal, I think it's one of those where you wouldn't be surprised if it was a red card, but people will obviously argue the case. But the clear rules state that it is a goal scoring opportunity, which is exactly what it was. It was a clear goal scoring opportunity that was disallowed by him putting his arm out. Yeah. So for me, letter of the law, he has to go. But not going to be too biased on the situation. Obviously, it doesn't happen, but we still get the penalty, which is still a fantastic opportunity for us to level up the game in a game that we haven't performed very well in. We've created bits and pieces, but obviously Declan Rice steps up. Again, Dean Henderson is on it. It's a good save. I don't think it was a terrible penalty. I think it could have been a better penalty. I think it was too easily read. I think of where Declan Rice wanted to put it. His body shape is just a bit too readable. But still got to dive the right way, still got to make the save, which Henderson does. I think for the last 20 minutes, we did pretty much dominate the rest of the game, but without really creating anything. We obviously have Fornals again, that has another rattler from about 20 odd yards out, again, hits the bar. For me, as a West Ham fan, it just wasn't our day. It was Forest's day on Sunday. I do believe, though, that watching it as a whole, as a West Ham fan going forward, we need to see a lot more from the players that we did from last season. I know it didn't help that we're playing Ben Johnson at centre back and he just looked absolutely lost there next to Zuma. For me, Sofal and Souček are both one season wonders. They've got to go. I think they did well for us when we was in a relegation battle and did half decent the next season. But I think they're either burnt out or they've just lost it, or it's just not falling for them anymore, or I don't know what it is. But for me, Souček and Sofal have got to come out of the starting lineup now, which with us getting a new centre back in Tilo Kehrer, I think Ben Johnson will now go back to right back, which will take out Sofal. Souček will probably still play in centre mid, but I do believe West Ham need to sign another centre mid to replace Souček because, as I say, for me, he just doesn't do it.
Yeah.
He's not creative enough. I mean, all the chances fell to him on Sunday, and he couldn't finish. Just could not finish. The only player for me that really showed any aggression, any want to win the game was probably Benarama for me.
Yeah.
And I will say something, and people will probably clip this, quote it, whatever you want to do. But Declan Rice did have a poor game on Sunday, and I do not say that very often or very lightly. But I want to put that out there so people know I'm not 100% biased towards Declan Rice. I say when he has a bad game, and Sunday he had a bad game. I think he got a bit too aggressive on Jesse Lingard for obvious reasons. I think but to be honest, I think he doesn't get helped out by Souček anymore. For me as a whole, I think he gets exposed a bit too much now, Declan Rice, not having Souček next to him, and being the player that Souček used to be. But as a whole, Declan Rice knows he should have done better. Obviously, the penalty miss obviously amplifies it even further. But for me as a whole in the game, it just wasn't our day. Forest ran their hearts out, deserved the 3 points in the end, and it's one of those. I don't know if you've got anything else to touch on it, but
no, not right. I think you've covered every point. Shall
but
we?
yeah,
Oh, go on.
that was it.
Shall we move on to the North London derby? I think it's the North London derby. Chelsea.
This is the game. This is the game of the weekend for me.
Full of goals and controversy.
Massive controversy.
So, shall you start? Think you?
Yeah.
Did you get to watch the game? I didn't.
I did. Yes.
All right, I'll let you start.
What I will say is, in the first half, there isn't actually really that much to touch on. I think it was pretty much dominated by Chelsea in the first half. Tottenham did not get going whatsoever. Chelsea had a game plan, and it was absolutely working to a T. Obviously, Cucurella starting his first game, he showed exactly why Chelsea wanted to sign him, and I think Man City will now be ruined the fact they haven't, because he was playing very well on the left-hand side, and it was his corner that fell to Koulibaly on the volley in the box,
What
and
a finish, by the way.
guy puts it away like a top-tier striker. I mean, they've signed him to keep out goals, not do that, but they will take that all day long.
I think it's very much a case that the lack of creative instinct in that final third showing for Chelsea at the minute, with 2 goals coming from defensive players.
I'd say it is, but for me, they had a game plan where they wanted to snuff out Tottenham. They didn't want to make it a gung ho game, like obviously it ended up being. But in the first half, Chelsea when they went 1-0 up after the 19th minute, they just calmly controlled the game. They didn't overly look for like a long ball to Sterling. They kept the ball, kept possession. They were frustrating Tottenham, and they were frustrating them hard. And you could see that. But then we'll come to the second half, and this is where all hell absolutely broke loose. Again, the second half started the same as the first half ended. Chelsea were dominating the game. There wasn't really much to say. Then it all changed for me when Richarlison comes on for Tottenham. Now, although he's obviously known as a live wire, and everyone knows that for a fact at his time with Everton, but he came on with such aggression and intent that it just somehow got all the Tottenham players riled up with him, and they started to get into Chelsea's face and start trying to get the ball back and try and dominate the game themselves. Now, Højbjerg's equaliser. What I will say is the first thing is that when Havertz is running through, and I believe it was Romero that chopped him down, that it is a foul, but it wasn't given by the referee. So the game moves on, and there's about 3 or 4 other different stages of play before it gets to Højbjerg putting the ball in the back of the net from the edge of the box. And it's one of those where, as VAR, it has to be the same passage of play for them to come back and look at it. So, unfortunately for Chelsea, they can't go back that far. You've got Jorginho in the box. I don't know why he's trying to do a drag back in his box where he's got 3 or 4 Tottenham players surrounding him. He could have just stuck it out of play, sent it 50 yards just to clear the danger. He could have just passed it back to Mendy, who would send it 60, just to get your ass up the pitch. He didn't do it. He tried to drag back. They lost the ball. He claimed a foul in the box. I saw nothing, I'll be honest. It falls to Højbjerg. He takes a shot. For me, it's not even... He doesn't even think it's... Yeah, he doesn't even think it's going to go in, Højbjerg. He's just sort of thinking, oh, I'll go hit this. And it ends up in the back of the net, which obviously sends a massive melee because Conte's now got riled up in Tuchel's face. Tuchel's now got riled up in Conte's face. And it all hell breaks loose. Then after a few minutes, it all calms down. As soon as it has all calmed down, Tuchel whips Jorginho off the pitch after that, probably for the reason of him just being an idiot, which is unfortunate for Jorginho because until that point, he was actually dominating the game from midfield. He was picking out the passes. He was dictating the play and all this and that. But in the Premier League, it's small margins, and that small margin that cost Chelsea at that moment. But then when it calms down, as I say, Azpilicueta comes on for Jorginho, and they actually changed their formation a little bit. They actually go and they move Reece James to sort of like a right winger, if anything. And it actually led to Chelsea retaking the lead. It was fantastic play from N'Golo Kante, keeps the ball in a tight area surrounded by 3 players, and he picks out Sterling around the 20-yard line, center of the goal. And from there, you could see the overload, and Tottenham struggled with this overload all game long. Defenders have been dragged out at that point, and Sterling runs at the defender. He knows he's got Reece James to his right. He's just got to play that pass perfectly weighted for Reece James to just run onto it and strike it. It's exactly what he did, and Reece James made it 2-1 to Chelsea. And at this point, you think game done because Chelsea have been dominating the game. Tottenham got what I'd call a lucky equaliser. And you think all the controversy is now done. But that is far from the case. Havertz starts rolling up with Romero. Romero starts rolling up with Havertz. They're both at each other pretty much all game long. Havertz ends up getting booked, and Tuchel decides, nope, not having that, and brings Havertz off just in case for the red card. Then we come to what was the last few minutes of the game. Tottenham get a corner. Now, from this resulting corner, everyone's seen it. Romero clearly yanks Cucurella's hair back. The referee has a clear view of it, and nothing is said about it. Obviously, it riles up the Chelsea players. They want the ref to look at it, not only for them not to have another corner and be given a free kick, but for a red card to be shown for Romero. It does go to VAR. VAR do look at it. You can clearly see him pulling his hair back. Somehow VAR do absolutely nothing, and they allow that second corner to be taken. At this point, Chelsea are probably very upset that this has resulted in this manner. And Tottenham do receive that second corner. It gets swung in. Harry Kane gets his head onto it, and it ends up in the back of the net. And from there, all hell breaks loose once again. Because from that resulting corner, Tottenham make it 2-2, and that was pretty much the last kick of the game.
Yeah,
Um,
96th minute equaliser.
yeah, for me, Chelsea can feel very, very, very hard done by. They conceded 2 goals where they probably got the wrong rough of the green. For me, obviously, the Havertz um, the Havertz foul on him, which led to the Højbjerg goal. I literally said it in real time because as soon as Havertz got fouled, I literally said in real time watching the game, if this ends up as a Tottenham goal, Chelsea are going to go mad, and that's exactly what happened. And the Cucurella one, there's just no. I don't even know what VAR look at these days. I generally don't. I used to be a big advocate for VAR when it not when it first came in, but when they changed it up. I think it was last season. I thought VAR did a okay job. I was a half decent advocate for it, but this season I don't even know where to start. It's clear
VAR's
enough.
biggest issue is the fact that it can't overturn a decision. It has to be a clear and obvious error. They can't referee the decisions, which I think is stupid. That's what it should be there for. It's a video
Yeah,
assistant referee.
but you say that, but then if that's the case with VAR, then what would you need referees and linos for?
But
They'd be out of jobs.
if the referees can't do their job as is on the pitch, what's the point in having them?
I agree. I do agree.
It's one
But
of them. It's if the referee isn't competent enough to do his job, which if he has, like I've seen the incident, but I didn't see it from the referee's perspective. But if he has got clear viewing and he thought, nah, not a foul, it's not really a good advertisement for this so-called best league in the world. If these issues are happening week in, week out, which they have been.
I agree. For me, it comes down to like even Tottenham fans, and which is actually mad to think because sometimes Tottenham fans could be very, very biased when it comes to decisions like this. But even Tottenham fans would come out and saying, "How have we got away with that one?" Um, it's clear and obvious, and VAR did nothing towards it, which is just absolutely crazy. And I could harp on for hours about how Chelsea should have put the game away in normal time because they absolutely dominated it. I could harp on about um, how bad the refereeing decisions was in this game. Um, but all I will say as a whole is that the standard of refereeing needs to improve.
Oh, massively.
Simple as. It cost Chelsea 3 points today. Well, on Sunday, sorry. And those are big 3 points in terms of Chelsea season.
Yep.
They could look back on this result and it could cost them.
Yeah.
And that's a big, big problem. And the reason that we have VAR is to stop moments like this happening. And it wasn't. What I will say, though, is it was very, very, very bad defending for that second corner, though. I get that as a Chelsea players, you're upset that they shouldn't even have this second corner, but you've got to think of it in the large scheme of things. If you defend this corner, you win the game.
Yeah.
And there were 3 Tottenham players that could have got their head onto that ball and put it in the back of the net. And unfortunately for them, one of the most dangerous players in the Premier League, Harry Kane, did.
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, Harry Kane was literally null and void all game. He had one-on-one that he should have scored 9 times out of 10, and he didn't. He puts it wide. But other than that and his little header, he did nothing all game, Harry Kane. He looked like a spare object.
Yeah.
Sort of like what he does for England, coming proper deep just to get a touch on the ball and spray a ball out wide, which is kind of a pointless ball because you spray the ball out wide.
You're not there to then receive it.
Exactly. You're not now then in the box when the ball comes into the box. But as a whole, I think Chelsea played well, dominated most of the game, deserved the 3 points, didn't get the 3 points. I think Raheem Sterling is showing he's going to be a valuable asset to Chelsea. Same with Cucurella. They both look very good signings for them. I think Tuchel has a good idea of how he wants Chelsea to play. I still believe that they need a striker, an out-and-out striker. I do think Havertz works hard, but I mean, there was a
He's
point
not a
where
number 9.
Reece James put a blinder of a cross, and it was literally pinpoint perfect between two defenders, right on Havertz's foot, 3 yards out, and Havertz missed the target. That's where an out-and-out number 9 will put you 3-1 ahead, and at that point it's game over, and you don't have any of this controversy.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a whole, Tottenham will obviously be very happy with this result because they deserve nothing and got something.
Yeah.
Thanks to some questionable refereeing decisions. But Chelsea will need to not go back to the drawing board, but because I think if they play that way every week, they will pick up a lot of points this season. But
we'll move on to the final game of the weekend. I also just want to say that Nottingham Forest have completed a signing of Wolves midfielder Morgan Gibbs-White for £44.5 million.
Jesus. And he started this weekend, so that's interesting.
Yeah, interesting sign. But we'll get on to the last game of the weekend. Try and make this a quick one, so it's not too long of an episode for you. But yeah, Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. Where do I start?
This is all you, my friend.
What I will say is, to be fair, we didn't actually play it that bad. We started lively, we started with intent, we dominated most of the game, but to only have 4 shots out of 4 shots on target out of 24 shots is shit. No other word to describe it. It's appalling. And it took a red card in the 57th minute to actually start looking like a football team. The decision...
That was a scary thing about Liverpool. I was just saying that was actually the scariest thing about Liverpool. You look better with 10 men than you did 11.
Yeah, it's silly. What I will say is if Joe Gomez was fit to play in that game for any capacity, should have started him. You can't play a high line with Nathaniel Phillips. As much as I love Nat, he was a fucking stalwart defender. He was brilliant for us the year that we got all these injuries. But he shouldn't be playing against a Palace team that look to counter and we play a high line. Because he was who they targeted.
Oh, 100%.
And I will say for Palace's goal was very much against the run of play. People who were saying Van Dijk should have defended better, he has to decelerate or he just clatters into Zaha and gives away a penalty. And if he does decelerate and put a foot in, all Zaha has to do is cut inside. And we know Zaha can do that. He is a very, very tricky winger. And that angle then becomes a great angle to score from. What I will say is Van Dijk did do the right thing. He backed his goalkeeper. It's just a shame that was a inch perfect finish from Zaha. It was a lovely goal. It was typical vintage Zaha, that opening of the body and putting it far post. It was a great finish.
What I will say to the Van Dijk defending, I do agree. There was obviously some people saying that if he'd have sprinted more, he would have got to Zaha before he takes that shot. But as a defender, you have to anticipate, like you say, Zaha cutting inside. That's why he didn't go full pelt, because if Zaha then comes inside, Van Dijk's there to just smother him.
Yeah.
But as you say, it was a fantastic finish from Wilf Zaha. And the one thing I will say on Liverpool is no matter how good they are, they play, like you say, a very, very high line. No matter who is at the back, even if it's Nat Phillips, if it's Matip, if it's Konate with Van Dijk, regardless, they will play a very, very high line. And there is opportunities for teams
to get in behind
and Liverpool back their goalkeeper so much more than any other team in the Premier League, probably in the world. Actually, they back Alisson more than anyone else should, and for good reason. He's a fantastic goalkeeper. But it's one of those where 9 times out of 10, I believe Alisson does save that. Zaha just put it pinch fucking perfect.
Yeah, he put it in that, essentially between the post. It was hitting the post. It was a inch perfect finish. After that goal, again, just normality resumed. We had the chances, we dominated the ball. I will say this, and it's very much what you said about the West Ham youngster last episode. Harvey Elliott is going to be a star.
Oh, I
Harvey
agree. I
Elliott
thought he was
was
fantastic.
fucking phenomenal that game. He was brilliant. Personally, I've seen a tweet and I agree wholeheartedly with this. He has taken a bunch of Henderson's performances in that role, analysed them, and done the opposite. Because
Yeah,
he had done everything from a number from the 8 that we want from the 8. And I
yeah, I
think
agree.
that role is his to lose now. That's his role.
I
And from
agree.
now
He
on,
was a
I can see him starting a lot more games because he just was he just oozed confidence. He was defensively brilliant. His output, his end product, yes, could be a bit better, but he shows that level of intelligence where that ball that comes out on the edge of the box, he takes an extra touch, he takes it past a man, he takes it past another, and then Anderson blocks the shot that was destined for the bottom corner. If that's Henderson, he's just twatting that against his legs. You know,
yeah.
he's got that level, he's got that intelligence, he's got that maturity to know, right, if I just hit this, it's going to hit a defender, I'll take it past, I'll try get as close to the goal as I can to open up that angle.
For me,
And
with Harvey Elliott, there were two things that stood out for me with Harvey Elliott. One, it was his determination on Monday night. He just did not stop running. He was everywhere. He was trying to get involved in every bit of play that Liverpool would. Anything good did result.
from
Harvey Elliott had
him, yeah.
something to do with it. And the second thing I will say is his composure as a young kid. He, like you say, when he does pick up the ball on the edge of the box and he takes that extra touch to then go round one of the defenders and still have the composure to like sort of try and sell a dummy to Anderson before then taking that shot. It shows how good of a player he not can be. He is. He
Yeah.
showed that. He showed he can play at this level.
Mm.
And I think you've seen that in glimpses from him in the past. Obviously, the craziest thing for me is he's just come back from a really bad injury, and he's done that. A lot of kids this day and age, when they get a bad injury, their confidence drops. They get scared. But you saw none of that from Harvey Elliott whatsoever. He played with freedom on Monday night,
Yeah.
and he was just one of Liverpool's standout performers.
Mm.
But I'll let you carry on.
And then we get to, the 57th minute, the red card. It is a red card. It is a complete moment of madness from Núñez. Yes, he had a quiet game. I don't think he was brilliant, but from what I've seen all over Twitter, it is a complete meltdown and an overreaction. He has got technical ability. His link-up play was quite good. It's not the link-up play that we expect from the likes of Bobby Firmino, who, it's unfair to liken link-up play when you have someone in that role who has done the things he's done in the last few years. But Darwin Núñez didn't have a bad game. And, there were 3 scuffed shots, 2 from him, 1 from Salah. If one of them goes in the back of the net, we win the game. He hits the post earlier in the second half from a scuffed shot. Or in the first half, sorry, from a scuffed shot.
Yeah.
And, he has the one back post where, he hits the top of his foot and balloons off. The goals will come. He's very much, he'll get 6 or 7 chances in a game. And if he scores 2, no one's going to talk about the 4 or 5 that he missed. There's that
100%.
volume that, he's going to score goals. And, we found the best of him coming off the bench around 60 minutes. And if that's what he wants to be, if it is like for the first name, if we just bring him off the bench 60 minutes in and he scores goals and he gets 10 or 15 goals off the bench to gain that confidence, I'm fine with that. I do think he is going to start, and I do think he'll be fine when he comes back. He's got to learn the English game. We had a Uruguayan striker that had a reputation for heated moments, and he went on to be a success. And I think a headbutt is a lot less fucking tame than a bite. And no one ever made them comments about Suarez or, his temperament something to be, talked about. He will be fine. There'll be no worries, and I can see him being a Premier League striker and a Liverpool striker for many years to come.
I agree with everything you've said. I mean, there isn't really too much to touch on the red card. It was just absolute stupidity on his part.
It was an immature reaction, and he played into Anderson's hands.
It was 100%. Anderson riled him up, and in the Premier League, he will now learn, and he has to learn fast that you can't do these things. It's
Yeah.
that simple. You can't.
You
You just
just can't
can't.
do it.
You just can't. You just can't get away with it. I
Mm,
mean, years ago you used to be able to, not with VAR now, because
mm,
they do sometimes get things right, and on Monday night they did. It's
yeah.
like,
And then we kept knocking on the door. We looked like a team that knew how to play football after the 57th minute, and that was echoed in a fantastic strike from Luis Diaz. You know,
out of nothing as well.
he came out of nothing. Yeah, he cut inside off the right, took it past two, opened that chance up like we've seen him do time and time again, and it just not opened for him. And this time it did, and he found the far post. And it was, it was very much the same. Just we couldn't knock on the door. Fabio Carvalho had a few chances. He's going to be another one that's, going to make a position his own, because he had a strike late on in the second half that just whizzed past the post. Salah had a chance that just whizzed past the post. There was chances in that game, but there were half chances. But the worrying stat is the fact that we've now gone behind in 6 consecutive league games. I don't get why we keep starting so slow.
Yeah, there is that. What I will say though is I'm going to touch on Crystal Palace a little bit because, as you say, although Liverpool dominated the game, Palace and Patrick Vieira, they set out with a plan, and their plan worked perfectly. They played a very, very deep line. There are two banks of four, and they had Eze and Zaha, who were basically their security blanket to get them up the pitch and to play on the counter attack when needed. And obviously, that led to the first goal.
Yeah.
Very Eze, because I want to touch on this goal because although we've touched on the fact that Van Dijk doesn't get back and Zaha puts it in beautifully, I want to talk about Eberezer. This kid is something special.
Yeah.
He literally brings the ball down perfectly. He's surrounded by 3 Liverpool players. I think he does like a little drag back and then pulls the ball out just to get out of that gap. And then in a split second, he sees the run of Zaha, and it has to be. Everyone knows when Liverpool's high line, they actually can play an offside trap probably better than any team
Oh
in the
yeah.
world. You have to get that ball perfect at the right time, and he got it absolutely spot on. And when you send a player like Zaha away, he's going to burn you.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it just comes down to can you finish for me. Like I said, Liverpool will give you chances.
Mm.
It's just can you finish? It's that simple. Like you've seen it for, and they won't stop doing this either. They
No.
will continue to do it because they want to dominate the game. They would rather give up 2 chances a game and dominate the game for 85 minutes than it be like a 50-50 battle because they're playing such a deeper line. And that doesn't suit the players they have anyway. You don't want to see Bobo and Trent in deeper roles.
Yeah.
They'll only come back when they need to. They'd much rather spend the time in the other team's half.
So you're seeing Trent picking up positions in between, like the pocket of space in between Harvey Elliott and Salah. And I've said for a long time, and people can call me stupid, people can say whatever they want. You take the defensive aspect of defensive aspect out of Trent's game, he'll shine. He played a ball inch perfect pass to Mo Salah in the first half that in a space that he picked up in the centre of the park.
I agree.
And it was a phenomenal pass, and I think if you just give him that freedom to do that every game, you've got such a player on your hands. And I know Klopp will never do it because he blasted Southgate for trying it in England. But I just think if any one of a player could do it, it's him.
I agree. And obviously for a couple of years now, there's been that conversation where is Trent's best position but for me, it's one of those, like I said in the last episode, and Klopp obviously goes by it. If it ain't broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, for me, Crystal Palace had a game plan. They set out beautifully, and they frustrated Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
And it frustrated them hard. Liverpool are usually one of these teams where you can sit back at them, but they'll find a way. And again, for me, Liverpool, I like Man City. If they score early and they score first, they would have gone on to win this game 3-4-0. Because not only at that point do Palace then have to
Chase
come
the
out,
game.
which opens up more spaces, but it just gives Liverpool more confidence. And it just didn't happen. They obviously go 1-0 down, so right off the bat they're chasing the game. Then obviously you get the red card for Nunes, which also doesn't help things. But I actually believe you played better with 10 men than you did with 11 somehow. But yeah, just as a whole, I think Palace will always be buzzing about that point. Liverpool, 2 games, 2 points. It's not the best start. Now 4 points behind City already. It's not the start you want to have. Obviously, it's been 2 games. There was a conversation on Monday Night Football between Carragher and Neville about are these 4 points going to actually make the difference? I mean, who knows? If you look at past seasons, yes, they will.
Yeah.
Because of how close it's been. It's not the start Liverpool whatsoever. You want to be, if Man City are winning 2 games, you want to be winning 2 games. But, I mean, there's still a lot of football left to be played. There's still a lot of questions left to be answered. Man City, they are beatable. Let's be honest, they are beatable. I don't think Liverpool are going to be ringing the alarm bells right now. I think the draw for Palace is actually something very good for them because it gives them confidence going forward after their performance against Arsenal on the first game. But yeah, for me, I think that it's a good result for Palace. Liverpool obviously got some questions to be asked now, and they'll have to answer them at Manchester United, which is a game that, let's be honest, everyone will be going into it thinking Liverpool are going to put 5 or 6 past them.
Yeah.
And Liverpool have to answer those questions. Obviously, no Darwin Núñez, so you'd expect Bobby Firmino to come back in, or maybe Klopp will shake it up and he'll start Carvalho with Diaz and Salah.
Personally, I think that's the move, but it'll be remain to be seen.
Only Klopp knows at this point.
Yeah.
He'll have a game plan for Man United. It will remain to be seen whether Man United try and play the same way again. If they do try and play the same way again against Liverpool, they're in trouble. I'll be honest.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the last time they actually got a decent result against Liverpool when they played long ball football to like Rashford. Is Ten Hag that kind of manager? I don't know.
No, definitely not.
But we will find out. But what I will say though is just taking a look at the Premier League table as it stands after 2 games. So you got Man City and Arsenal leading the way, both with 6 points, 6 goals both scored, looking great. In third place is actually Brentford, who've had a fantastic start to the season. I'm eating my words right now that Brentford might struggle. But again, only 2 games gone, but it's exactly the start Brentford wanted after their great season last season. Just looking down the table, you've got Chelsea in 7th. You've got Liverpool in 12th. You've got my beloved West Ham sitting down there with Everton and Manchester United. It's not been a good start to the season for either of those clubs. But what I will say, though, for West Ham is we've got City out the way early, and I will take that all day long.
You can start picking up points from there now.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, like I said, I said in the last episode that we needed to beat Forest. Obviously, we didn't. We get a point against them. It's not the start Moyes wanted whatsoever after last season. But I think with our transition signings now coming into it, I think I've got no praise for West Ham whatsoever.
Yeah. But that wraps up another fantastic weekend of football.
It is.
And I can't wait for this weekend again.
Yeah, so it's on to the next one. And after that, we will be coming to the end of the transfer window where everything massively.
We might give you a cheeky little transfer roundup.
We might just do that. But make sure, guys, you keep an eye on all the socials at Eradicate eSport on Twitter. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you did enjoy this video.
Let us know your predictions for this game week. Let's hear your scoreline predictions.
Yeah, the comments will actually be on this week.
Yes, the comments will be on. That was my fault.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching or listening, whatever you guys have been doing, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Peace.
Cheers.